spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. What's up, guys? Welcome to and here we are to do a nice little breakdown, discussion, and analysis of the spoilers for chapter 413 of My Hero Academia, which is known as A Lump of Lead. And this chapter, it has a lot in it. And by a lot, I mean a lot. And by a lot, I mean a lot. And by a lot, I mean a lot. So we cannot waste any more time. Let's hop right into it. Editing me. Ready. 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me, and keep it on me at all times. And apparently, it seems like the plan now is for Midoriya Izuku to not have it on him, nor keep it on him anymore at any time, because the plan is to just straight drop one for all. Kind of, sort of, but mostly. But in a way that allows Midoriya to still be a hero after the fact, which in my opinion is, we'll get into it, and I'm definitely gonna hold off full judgment on it until we get the translations full for this chapter, and then I'll probably have another reread of the official translations, and then see how I feel fully before I lay my full gauntlet on the table about it. But we have a lot to talk about, so let's not waste any more time. Let's actually hop right into it. So we open up with 413, and we see the Vestige All Might looking through the past, looking through time. It was to get a direct flashback to Stars and Stripes, well, rebellion against All for One, with inside All for One. That's kind of I guess that kind of is threefold, because she was inside All for One / Shigaraki, and Shigaraki was kind of inside of All for One, but All for One was inside of All for One, and I'm talking about All for One the quirk being the container for All for One the man, and all for that. I'm gonna confuse myself so many times, but essentially, Stars and Stripes rebellion against All for One. Once New Order was absorbed, this is New Order by proxy. Stars' personality and the effects of New Order rebelling back against All for One. This is something that I very clearly mentioned in the previous review, and I think even the previous spoiler discussion, about how Stars and Stripes is actually getting a retroactive role in terms of taking down Shigaraki. And you know what? I'm fine with it. I'm definitely fine with it. Honestly, for a character who felt like they were introduced for darn near nothing. Nothing at all. Like straight up, to do an unnecessary job in terms of hyping up Shigaraki. We didn't have the entire first war to hype up Shigaraki and his level of power. It really made it feel like Stars and Stripes was just introduced to slaughter any external help plotline that Hori didn't feel like writing. But with this being added retroactively to make Stars and Stripes more important, as he essentially, if this plan works, which it will, but when this plan works, and let me not even say if, when this plan works, essentially Stars and Stripes is going to be the one to save everyone. Indirectly. Very post-mortem. Very Ghost from Beyond the Grave. But she's going to be responsible for it. Because the idea of what they plan to do in order to, well, I'll get into it more, but it's fully based on her rebellion here, yet in a slightly unique way. As the text says, the chapter begins with a flashback of Star's New Order final moments inside the All for One vestiges. While fighting other quirks, she saw something quite unusual. Now, this is a bit of retroactive continuity that I'm mixed on, mainly because we saw the entire thing, unless, because, I haven't read the Stars and Stripes stuff in a while, but, I'm pretty sure this part is just added retroactively. I'm not even sure if there's a hint to it in the original fight, but I'd have to go back and reread. I may do that for the review, or I may just chalk it up. Because once again, I've been wrong before about Hori not having foreshadowing points, and I just had them pointed out to me. So I'm going to assume that most likely there is a moment where the star vestige does glance to the side or do a little looky look or notices something else for the sake of my sanity. I'm going to assume Hori didn't just pull this out to fit a narrative he's going with. And a narrative that I'm growing a little bit more harsh on, in the sense that it doesn't seem like Hori, I feel like the writing potential of this may slowly be dying. But that's also just me having a very specific vision, and I probably was just reading too much into 412 and its portrayal of both of these characters, and actually thinking that Shigaraki was supposed to be a character. Like an actual character who exists for character reasons. It's not fully gone yet, but based on what Starch says here, she notices, and we see the continuation of the of the finger that she pointed out last chapter, just a look. We see that she notices deep within the darkness, surrounded by those massive hands that hold back, there is in fact a sad child. In fact, she straight up says, Master. This is Stars and Stripes. Master, there's a sad child over there. And she points towards the crack, that little slight opening. Presumably this is Tenko Shimoda's eye. Actually, no. This still is Stars and Stripes' eye as she's getting disintegrated and blown apart. But I think this is, the thing is though, I think this is like Stars and Stripes, like the real one. She may have, I'm not entirely sure. This is once again where I'm going to need like the translations to come out and see if I can get a better understanding of this. I think like this eyeball that is seeing this is like real Stars and Stripes, who was in the middle of being decayed, remember? And then she's noticing, probably due to, New Order being absorbed by All for One simultaneously, and her final command to it, she probably temporarily broke into the Vestige world. I'm not fully sure how, like, maybe they're seeing like a memory? Maybe Shigaraki, by remembering this instant, because this is contextualized under a flashback of Shigaraki, I think. Once again, I need to see the translations for this chapter. I'm not entirely sure. But I think they're seeing this interaction transcending time because of Shigaraki and, like, the whole quirk singularity, which is growing more and more intense, and it's, like, causing events that kind of sort of relate to each other, overwhelm and overlap. I don't know. I'm not going to question it. Once again, I've kind of just fully accepted quirks are magic, but it does seem a little bit weird in the context. Like, she said she's referencing Master as if she knows All Might's watching, which she wouldn't, nor should she still be alive, because remember, New Order did not stay with Shigaraki. It did not stay with All for One. It was dropped on some random dude. If you remember at the end of the Stars and Stripes fight, once the New Order Rebellion started going crazy inside of All for One and just off in quirks, All for One was like, no, we cannot do this anymore. And he just straight dropped it on some random dude and left it. So, like, realistically, there shouldn't be anything left. Like, we specifically see when a quirk gets transferred, even a long held quirk, such as Danger Sense from Shinomori, with All for One, like a quirk that's been there, I think, for like 3 or 4 generations of users. Like, I think Shinomori was like the 6th or 5th user. There's not a trace of it left. Shinomori's gone. Like they don't even, like, there's not even a whiff or a taste of him left in One for All. So realistically, if this were to be happening in the present moment, I don't know how, unless it goes into like some quirk singularity stuff. I'm assuming it's that though. I'm assuming it's that, because how else would she be talking to Master? And Master's presumably, once again, this is a little bit weird. And this is kind of supported by the pointing out of the crack and who we cut to. We see All Might realize, hold on, wait a minute. What? Like, he's freaking and geeking. As the text says, All Might wakes up. Edshot says that All Might needs to stay awake. Sorry, All Might needs to stay awake so he doesn't perish. But All Might isn't sure what just happened. He was having a vision, just like when he was in the hospital with Midoriya after the war. But how? He's too far away from Deku right now. Once again, I think this is like multi-layered. Like, this isn't just All Might, who had a direct tie to One for All, having a flashback to One for All. Because remember, One for All wasn't anywhere near the conflict between Stars and Stripes and All for One. That was not a thing. So I'm thinking it's like, it's essentially like, how do I put this? Something along the lines of multiple Wi-Fi receivers crossing over? Kind of, sort of, like, essentially, you know how you can have multiple devices hooked up to the same Wi-Fi, right? Like, and you can have multiple people join in on the same server. I think maybe the server is a better example here than Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi is giving something out, meanwhile a server is people going into a certain location. So I think All Might, since he was part of the One for All server, and One for All itself was part of the All for One server for the longest time, / obviously, Yoichi, they're all connected, and since New Order / Stars and Stripes was also implemented in there, even if only temporarily, since she had some access to the server, her quirk was linked up to it, the ability is able to refract across time, and All Might's procedurally seeing memories, which I think are brought up by Shigaraki, because remember, Shigaraki can see and hear the vestiges. So, like, maybe at the mention of, I'm thinking this is how it goes. Kudo mentions, hey, kid, you need to give up One for All. Shigaraki hears that, thinks of, wait a minute, give up One for All. That reminds me of when Stars and Stripes gave up New Order to me, or technically Master and All for One, and then he kind of like reversed, like he backlogged it. Like there's so many different things that go into this, and once again, I'm gonna wait more for the official translation. But this is just all to facilitate the idea that these connections are so powerful that All for One itself, or One for All itself, may literally be breaking. Like the amount of energy being coursed through One for All that's causing these transcendental time-crossing visages due to its connections and resonance with All for One is literally breaking space. Which once again feeds back into the themes of One for All and quirks in general having the power to change fate. Having some manipulation over time itself. Literally being able to alter the future. Now it's just not the future that's being changed, but like all of time is sort of reflecting and magnifying and shattering due to the raw power contained within these two quirks, which is interesting. Once again, wishing energy was kind of the like collective thing that was brought up earlier when Bakugo was resurrected, but I think this is kind of separate from wishing energy. I think this is mostly quirk stuff, whether it be quirk singularity, quirk evolution, something of the sort. But we see that All for One once again notices, is One for All becoming frayed? As in, like, the bonds of One for All are kind of, like, whatever tied it together is now slowly breaking apart, which is likely partially due to Shigaraki, you know, stealing a piece of it. And due to that, it's kind of like breaking. Essentially, when you look at the inside of a wire, like a wire is not just one solid piece of copper or whatever material it's made of. It's like a bunch of interconnected strands. That's All for One. Shigaraki, by essentially rushing in there and grabbing a piece of the wire out, messed up the entire thing. It's slowly fraying apart and returning back to the mass of wires, which is connecting all the people who were once connected to it. And we see that things just ain't looking too hot for big boy Midoriya, as we see that Shigaraki just smacks bro straight to the ground in a mad disrespectful fashion. And we see that so it is Shigaraki. It is Shigaraki. I think it is Shigaraki just based on seeing it, because what's said here is, cut back to the fight, and Tomura doesn't understand why he had a vision of Star. I've annihilated you. But then he remembers her last line, how heroes always inherit each other's wills, and thinks about the possibility of it being an ember of Star's flame. So essentially, that's the other thing I fed into. This is why I said I only took light glances. I didn't properly fully read it, I'll admit, because it's like, spoiler. But, with that being the case, essentially, remember how All Might had the embers of All for One still in him, and he could access those for a while? Even though he had given the quirk up to Midoriya, essentially a similar thing's happening to Stars and Stripes. Even though that one guy most likely detonated from having Stars and Stripes and New Order shoved into him and then All for One left, it's very, very likely that the embers of Stars and Stripes, especially considering the rebellion that happened, are locked in Shigaraki. Though the Ember having such a solid, I don't know, it still is a little bit strange, but I think it makes sense with everything that was established about quirks and connections and embers and cross-brand, like all the things that have been said about quirks and how they operate in universe. This isn't exactly nonsense. It just confuses me a little bit because I don't know the full translations. And we see, of course, Shigaraki manhandling Midoriya even while having this mental conflict, and Midoriya just gets slammed straight into the ground, taking more and more and more lethal damage. And, of course, naturally, he has to ask Kudo, what you mean by that, bro? What you mean I gotta get One for All? Do you know how much I sacrificed? I built this company! Brick by brick! Me! It's like I had to fuse, like, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, and I forget what the other one's from. But naturally, bro's feeling a little bit protective of One for All. Not just for the fact that, you know, Shigaraki gets he may be able to end the entire world, but also for the fact that, like, yeah, this is the thing that allowed him to be a hero. It's why chapter 412 ends on "You can be a hero." Even though that's before All Might tells him about One for All. It's meant to remind Midoriya and kind of foreshadow for him that, you know, even without the power, you can still be a hero. No, he can't. And, like, even the chapter itself kind of goes in out of its way to say, you really can't. You do need the extra power. But I still think that's fine. I still do like the callback here. And what we see, as Kudo explains, is, let me be real with you, big dog. It's looking mighty tragic. But there's this certain issue. You want to save Shigaraki. That's fine. We agree with you on that one. You're a real one. For real, Midoriya. We aren't going to knock your ass on that one. However, there is an issue. All of that anger, that frustration, the memories of the past, it's all amassed, fused together into this massive ball of hatred and disgust and negativity. But there is something tiny, something present. All Might himself noticed a crack within that ball of malice. And with that being the case, the plan is, there's a wound that has slowly been opened up inside of Shigaraki Tomura. And with this mental wound, since it is a mental one that is built into the soul and the psychosis of Shigaraki, rather than one that is physical, super regeneration cannot fix it. And hypothetically, sure, maybe just Shinomori could not tear open that hole. But if every single one of them dives in and begins to chip away over and over and over and over and over again at that hole, then maybe they'd be able to tear it open. And then maybe, Midoriya, you could reach that crying child and save Shigaraki. So, here's my one thing about this. This makes sense. In the sense of, here's the main issue I have with it. One of the things that I had gotten out of 412, because of how it was hinted at, how it was written, even the officials, I kind of thought that we were going to tackle the whole idea of erasing Shigaraki. Like, Shigaraki the character. Not Shigaraki the persona, not Shigaraki the worldwide being, I will destroy Japan in 7 days if I really feel like it threat. No, just Shigaraki the individual. The character who we went on this whole journey with. Remember, one of the reasons why Shigaraki is pretty, like, there are definitely arguments for others that I see from time to time, but I'd say it's pretty consistent that Shigaraki is the most popular new-gen villain, and who a lot of people agree to be the best written one, is because we see his journey. We get his introduction to us in the cast through USJ, and we follow him. We follow him through the Kamino incident. We follow him through the overall incident. We follow him through My Villain Academia. We follow him through the First War. We go all through this, building up Shigaraki the character. We go through this journey with him. It's why he was one of my favorites. And it's why All For One coming back and hijacking the plot at the end of the First War is still... I have many writing issues with My Hero Academia. I say that. I have like 3. And even then, like, I really have 2. But my biggest writing issue with My Hero Academia is the fact that it just slaughtered all that character progress. All that momentum, all that growth, all that build-up to Shigaraki being the big bad, being his own villain. It was chopped by the end of the First War and then put on hold for like 100 chapters. Which, in our universe, I'm talking ours, is like 2 to 3 years. We just had to go without Shigaraki. It's why Shigaraki's low-key felt a little bit hollow. Because we had to go multiple years without Shigaraki. But, essentially, what this does, and based on how it's characterized and all that, without anybody talking back on it or anyone mentioning it, essentially what Hori's saying is all that character development, all, you know, that character you grew to know and invest your time in and understand and come to life, that doesn't matter. All that character development, all that growth, none of that matters. Shigaraki Tomura is not a man. He's a ball of malice that needs to be destroyed to save the kid who's inside him. All that time it's not wasted, but all the time we spent on developing Shigaraki as his own person, separate. Because once again, that was the thing. He was always just an all-for-one meat puppet. Even before he became a literal all-for-one meat puppet, back in the start of the series, he was just a mouthpiece. He was a piece of revenge. But the whole story of My Hero Academia, the reason why people love the dynamic between Midoriya and Shigaraki, is because it was the two growing into their own, growing into the greatest villain in history, and growing into the greatest hero in history. So to sack all that, and just say, no, that guy doesn't actually matter. He's not real. Ignore that. He's not actually a person. He's not actually a person. He's an obstacle that we're going to overcome, and you got to ignore it. All right? Just don't worry about all the time he took on. It feels like a waste. It feels like a waste, and this is one thing that I feel like maybe wasn't planned. Because why spend so much time making Shigaraki his own character just to tell us in the end that Shigaraki wasn't his own character? That he's not valid. The reason I was actually really, really hyped and really liking 412 because my interpretation of it was that, like, oh no,
Shigaraki is bringing up, and maybe Kudo and maybe other people will bring up that, well, Midoriya, by trying to focus so hard on this kid, you're erasing the man in front of you. How are you meant to save the child when you aren't able to acknowledge the child that man grew up in, well, the man the child grew up into? Deleting all that. Once again, multiple years of character development. I thought we were going to address that, but clearly we're not. Shigaraki is just something to be bowled over and erased like he never happened. And I'm just not rocking with that as much as I feel like Hori wants me to. Is it a bad thing? Not necessarily. I fully understand if Shigaraki was actually allowed to be a person, Midoriya would have to off him. He would have to off him. Like there's no way. The only way this can have a happy ending with Shigaraki still alive is if Tenko Shimura gets restored and we get like 5-year-old, or however old he was when his quirk first developed, Shiggy. Right before then. And then that guy gets saved. Like, that's the only way we can keep him there. So I get it. If we're going to fit the narrative of Midoriya being the perfect savior hero who doesn't take lives, then yeah, we need to sacrifice Shigaraki. But as a massive fan of Shigaraki, who had Shigaraki, I always glaze Endeavor. I've been glazing Endeavor. You've been on the channel, even in other series that have nothing to do with MHA. I always mention Endeavor's the best thing to come out of New Japan. I glaze Endeavor to the roof. But pre the end of First War, Shigaraki was my favorite character. Bro had one of the best character journeys. It was so interesting and amazing to watch him evolve. It's hard to see. It's essentially an extended version of Meruem's development, but still negative. Like, it's such a complicated thing that I'm going to dedicate a whole video to it. There have been a bunch of videos on it already on how Shigaraki was this perfect twist on a certain idea, the villain's journey done so well, parallel to the hero's journey, all that, to throw it all away. That's the thing I don't like. That's the one issue I have. And I'm gonna look, because admittedly, the reason I don't necessarily like watch other reviews and stuff like that is because I like to have my own opinions. Because I know my opinions are easily tainted. Like, my thoughts get changed all the time. Just reading comments, my thoughts will casually get knocked into a different direction. I'm very easy to convince. And I'm very easy to I accidentally take things all the time. Like, my art style is a combination of multiple different other art styles. So, I try not to watch too many other people's stuff. But I'm interested to see what the general community consensus is on this. Like, how do we feel about erasing Shigaraki as a character? How do you guys feel about it, if you're here? And how do you guys feel about Shigaraki essentially being reduced to nothing but an obstacle and not actually being acknowledged as the character he is? That Tenko Shimura was a person who grew up into Shigaraki, and not that they're just two opposite people. How do y'all feel about that? The one reason I'm not too mad at it, I'm just pointing it out as something I don't like right now, because there's the possibility that it doesn't work. There's a possibility that he's wrong. There's a possibility that they dig through all that malice and they just see that crying child who isn't crying, oh no, I want to be saved, but oh no, I want to tear everything apart. And like, they do all this, they risk it all, and Shigaraki is still evil. Because, that's the person he grew up into, and that child being inside of him is nothing more than the catalyst for that growth. But, once again, Hori's been trying to end the manga for like 2 years now. I don't really see us going that way. So like, what do you guys think about deleting Shigaraki wholesale as a character? Let me know. I'll probably make a full video on that after the translations drop and I get a full thing, and I may talk about that more in depth. But, of course, we see, with this being the case, there is a hope. Transferring One For All to Shigaraki will make it so that the crack will increase in size until it breaks, allowing them to reach his consciousness directly. But En disagrees with this plan. He thinks this will only make Shigaraki stronger, just like what happened with Danger Sense, which is true, but we see Midoriya was able to abuse that weakness. And we see that Kudo mentions that he has to expand the idea of transferring. Just as Midoriya had the egg and microwave imagery, he has to force it and visualize it in a more aggressive way. Instead of transferring, more like giving. Like, you ever hand somebody something? Like you don't like hand it over. You hand it over. Like, put something in, like, you grab their hand, open that bad boy up, smack something in it, close their hand and be like, take it, and then you run away. Essentially, me, whenever I have to give any of my friends or family gifts. They hate accepting gifts. I will give them gifts regardless. But with that being the case, with that being the idea, the goal is to not just hand over One For All completely, the whole quirk. It's to slide them in one by one. Kind of like throwing dice. Throwing dice at Shigaraki's. That's such a bad comparison. But it is accurate. Throwing dice at Shigaraki's general direction. Like, here, catch. Okay, catch another. Catch a third. And it's going to be the people. It's going to be the quirks. And we see that ultimately,
And there's a funny comparison using Bakugo as a reference of throwing papers at Midoriya's face versus actually handing them over. And we do see that essentially, depending on how the transfer works out, Shigaraki is going to take damage. Which is it's still, I mean, it still kind of feels weird. Like, the only reason I'm a little bit hesitant on this is because Shigaraki is literally housing hundreds of quirks, at least tens of quirks. What real difference is, because All Might wouldn't count. He's not a quirk that can be transferred. Midoriya's the 9th user, and Shinomori has been consumed. Like, what difference is 7 people gonna make? If Yoichi himself even does get transferred, it may just be 6. Unless, I don't know how they're gonna do it. It will feel a little bit like, the reason I didn't question New Order is because New Order was a law-breaking quirk. Like, it literally made new rules that the world had to follow, and thus it could actively rebel inside of All For One. Like, All For One is made to subjugate quirks, and if you're going one by one, like, maybe if they went all as a lump sum, just the whole thing One For All went inside and just boom, like essentially dove straight for the crack, got lodged in the crack and went boom, then I get it, but this one by one transfer idea, it just sounds like a good way to get absorbed. But presumably it's going to play something into, like, the willpower, and maybe Shinomori will end up having some sort of effect with danger set. Like, so there's going to be ways it'll work, but, like, I'm not fully sure how it's supposed to function, or at least properly. And we see that with this being the case, the quirk is what's going to be transferred over, not the strength. This is already established. I was gonna get a little nettled, but this was already established as Shinomori getting taken. Midoriya didn't get any weaker. He just lost the quirk factor, which is fine. The raw power of One For All is needed, and this is, I mentioned earlier in the video, this is essentially how you get to have your cake and eat it too. You get to have One For All and All For One destroy each other, get sacrificed, all that. But Midoriya still gets to keep the power. He still gets to be the number 1 hero. Because he's still stronger than anything else before, because he's a stockpile. So, like, he gets away with it. He gets away with keeping the power. Because that's a big thing a lot of people worried about at the end of 4-12. Like, wait, if he gives up One For All, how's he supposed to be the number 1 hero? But if he still has the strength to go with it, then we're all fine. Then it's like, oh, okay. So he's giving up One For All, but he's not really giving up One For All. Like, considering All Might was the number 1 hero and uncontested for forever with just the strength, yeah, Midoriya's going to be the number 1 hero just fine with just the strength. He may miss the quirks, but even then, he could still have the embers of the quirks. If Stars and Stripes can appear for like half a second multiple months later after being an ember for like 2 seconds, like not even an hour before All For One dove and got rid of New Order, the other ones will be embers, one way or another. But with that being the case, En offers himself up from a coward to a goat instantaneously. And he straight up says, dude, I'm pretty much useless. Smokescreen has been and always will be the worst quirk in One For All. But Kudo says, nah, G. That's all on me, for real. Honestly, bro cannot use Gear Shift right now. He will detonate. Because with that being the way it is, Kudo assumes that once Shigaraki absorbs the quirk, the transfer is not clean. It's not like a refresh. Like, you know how when you download a new game, it'll start with 0 save data? Essentially, think of it like, instead of downloading a new game, you're just downloading a game from one console to another. Like, when I switched over to the PS5, I transferred all my games over from my PSN account, meaning I kept all the save data, all the stuff I unlocked, all the stuff like that. That was transferred over cleanly. It's not like Shigaraki's getting a new quirk. He is getting a new quirk, but he's getting a quirk that has already been under extreme use. If anything, taking away Gear Shift from Midori would actually be a benefit, because he would lose the drawbacks of it, and Shigaraki would get those. Thing is, though, Shigaraki is such insane bodily composition right now, and regeneration, the drawbacks of Gear Shift would not matter. If he gets Gear Shift, he should waffle stomp anyway, but, like, he won't. Because reasons. But with that being the case, we see that's getting a little bit rough, getting a little bit risky. And Midoriya realizes that, yeah, you know, it's One For All is just the one thing he got from All Might. It's the thing that connected him to All Might, the thing that afforded him his chance to herohood. It's the thing that made him who he is today, allows him to make all the friends he's made, the connections he's made, and has given him the life that he's lived. And even if that life has been full of pain, agony, misery, training, suffering, all that, it's a life he got to choose, and it's a life he loves. And by sacrificing One For All, he's giving all that up. And he doesn't want to do that, because
even if he'll still have the power, the connections he's made because of One for All and the connections that the quirk was born of, those are what tie him to his favorite hero. But, you know, Midoriya's about the business. And we see that with this being the case, Midoriya locks in. And as Tomura's like, quit the yapping, let's get to work. Midoriya's like, fine, no more yapping indeed. And here, he goes into, I don't know what it is. Why bro low-key look like the Hollow Knight? I'm waiting to see the radiance pop out of her. I've been on a weird Hollow Knight. I've had it. Like, it was a PlayStation Plus game for a while now. I had it. I've watched one Hollow Knight video. I've consumed like 50 at this point. And half of them are lore videos. I don't know. Like, I've started the game now. Like, I was so close to playing that thing live. But then I was like, my software's still ain't software and like that. So I can't play it live. But, the boy was low-key. I was low-kizzle kind of invested in Hollow Knight. And this kind of reminds me of that look. Bro's looking devious. And once again, we call back to the ever-famous line. Well, look at that. Looking at you. I wouldn't have thought you'd be a hero. But, like, you know, whatever. I do like the bar. I do like the bar. But my main thing is still like, man, Shigaraki, they better hard delete you, buddy. They about to control alt delete you. And not in the way I wanted them to control alt delete you. They're going to just say your character irrelevant. But we do see that presumably Kudo is lingering in the fingers, about to get jabbed into Shigaraki. So overall, even with my complaints, even with my whining, even with my domain expansion, Horizon of the Endless Yapping, yeah, the chapter's still worthy. Undeniably. Like, notably, I'm fine with it. It's just that I personally don't like it. It's not even like I don't see the writing behind it. It's not even the fact that the thing is, I fully understand you can't have Midoriya win the moral battle and have Shigaraki still be a character. Those two world lines are not congruent. They simply are not. So I get it. Doesn't mean I have to like it, but doesn't mean it's wrong or bad or anything like that. So I'll give it its due respect. However, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, please leave Spider Doria. Or actually, no, leave Hollow Midoriya. Leave Hollow Midoriya in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to hit that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a pull-up page down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member to the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the live reaction to this very chapter, and also an ad-free variation of this video and that chapter review video. But now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Zach with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Connor Plays, Red Wolf 4765, Greyhound, and Akid's Void. I'd like to give another thank you to our $5 patrons, Victor, Sean, RNG Master, Midnight Gemlord, Metal Solid Crisis, Kevin, Igneal, Endemics LND. And I'd like to give another thank you to our $7 member, Autumn's Morning Lazo. And I'd like to give another chunk of thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchiha, Joaquin, Idemokami, and China Doll 09. And I'd like to give a fat, juicy, scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our wonderful $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. I'd like to give another hefty, defty, trifty, nifty thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.